Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
And unfortunately, union job action will now significantly impact commuters.
That our positions are too far apart for there to be a basis for settlement.
No deal. Transit talks break down. What escalating strike action means for your commute. Also.
And that this is putting children at risk of drug dependency and serious illness.
How BC is cracking down on the sale of vaping products, and will it work to protect teens? And
there's no shade of gray here. We really know that this is a drug that has significant risk.
Health Canada investigates concerns about the popular antihistamine Benadryl.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. A warning tonight. Your public transit commute is about to get a lot more complicated.
Delays are expected tomorrow as contract talks between the union and the employer have broken off.
Eva Yugen-Senj is live at the UBC bus loop. Eva, what can commuters expect?
Anita, Mike, by tomorrow afternoon, this bus exchange and others across Metro Vancouver could be transit chaos. The union is promising to escalate job action now that talks have fallen apart. You're being reminded to give yourself extra time. Expect lines and overcrowding on buses, with a likely 10% decrease in service overall.
That's a very provocative move on the part of the company.
It's all because the two sides have failed to reach a deal. Transit workers saying Coast Mountain Bus Company is still unable to meet their demands.
They made it very clear that, as we suspected, and unfortunately for the passengers that we serve, they are still not serious about addressing the outstanding issues.
The two sides made progress yesterday, guaranteeing a 40-minute break each shift, and for each lost break, double pay. So where's the gap? Wages.
They are still rejecting any comparison with Toronto transit system when it comes to drivers' wages, even though for Coast Mountain Bus Company executives and transit executives, they're more than happy to look at the Toronto transit system for comparison.
Our wage offer to the union is well in excess of other public sector settlements in British Columbia.
The company is promising to increase salaries over the next 4 years, meaning operators would earn nearly $70,000 and skilled workers would earn $88,000.
The union is not prepared to move in any meaningful way from their wage demands. And unfortunately, union job action will now significantly impact commuters.
Bus drivers in Metro Vancouver are refusing to work overtime tomorrow, along with Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week, leading to a lot of uncertainty for commuters who rely on transit. Up until now, most transit users haven't felt the impact of job action, but the feeling is by tomorrow evening's rush hour, catching a bus could be a nightmare. And again, I know I mentioned this early on, but it's important to remember that you need to give yourself extra time and check online for delays and cancellations. Anita and Mike.
Eva Yugen-Senj live at the UBC bus loop tonight. Thanks, Eva.
Higher taxes, limits on nicotine content, restrictions on sales and advertising.
Sweeping new rules on vape products are coming in BC to try to curb the explosion in teen vaping. As Mickey Cowan reports, the measures also come after several cases of probable vaping-related illness.
Vaping isn't legal for most teens, but that isn't stopping them.
It's just a social thing, I guess.
And it's also satisfying to have smoke come out of your mouth.
I vape because it's very socially acceptable these days, and all the other kids are doing it.
Maybe not all of them, but many. A 74% rise in youth vaping in just 1 year.
This is putting children at risk of drug dependency and serious illness.
So the government is looking to regulate the industry, making it harder and less desirable for kids to vape. Announcing today new regulations in the works.
This is the strongest plan Canada has ever seen. We're the first to take action.
It'll mean higher taxes on vape products, jumping from 7 to 20% PST, and a 2% hike on tobacco.
Yes, it is a big tax jump, and one that really signifies the urgency of this problem.
But the regulations go beyond taxes.
A big change is how much nicotine will be allowed in vaping products, no more than 20 milligrams per milliliter. Right now, many products have much higher levels, some of them more than double that. The store owner here tells me if these new rules come into effect, it means about a quarter of these products won't be allowed on the shelves.
That's a real big jump. I think people will be a little bit saddened that the nicotine levels are going to be brought down, but I think it's just for their own health too.
Despite owning a vape shop, Juti supports stricter rules, especially the new plan to keep flavored products in adult-only stores like his. He just hopes the government doesn't move to a total ban on flavors.
Mini donuts and your original custard. You can't run a business on 4 or 5 products. So that would definitely hurt, it would cripple the industry.
Also in the plan, more youth education on vaping. All of it expected to come into play next year. Mickey Cowan, CBC News, Vancouver.
A prominent Indigenous leader and former BC cabinet minister is facing historic sexual assault charges tonight.
Grand Chief Ed John is accused of several alleged assaults dating back several decades. The CBC's Dan Bird is here now with more. Dan, what are the charges?
The Crown says Ed John has been charged with 4 counts of having sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent. Now, the alleged offenses involve one person and date back to 1974 in Prince George. That charge was in the 1974 version of the criminal code and is not in the current updated code. Ed John, who is now 70, is the hereditary chief of the Tla'azdin Nation. He's a former lawyer, a well-known Indigenous leader, and, as you said, a BC cabinet minister. He served as Children and Families Minister for a brief time between 2000 and 2001. He also served 11 consecutive terms as an elected leader on the First Nations Summit political executive, ending in June when he didn't run for re-election. The summit says he was then a contracted advisor but was suspended immediately pending the outcome of this legal matter. John is set to be in court on December 10th in Prince George.
And Dan, we need to note the charges against John have not, of course, been proven in court, but they have prompted plenty of reaction.
Yes, they have, Mike. The Union of BC Indian Chiefs has released a statement. Part of it says this: the union was deeply disappointed to learn today that there are reports of historic sexual violence carried out by Grand Chief Ed John. UBCIC acknowledges the depth, emotion, and complexity of the issue of sexual assault and harassment, violence against Indigenous women, healing, and women's safety. The Crown tells us a special prosecutor was appointed to this case in late February. It made the news public only today after speaking with that lawyer and considering the specific circumstances of this case. Anita, Mike?
Dan Burrett reporting live tonight. Thanks.
Well, Port Moody's mayor says he apologized to the woman who accused him of sex assault on a date. Charges against Rob Vegromov were stayed yesterday, and he'll now be returning to work. The mayor has been on a leave of absence since mid-October when he stepped away from his role after being charged. Yesterday, the Crown stayed the charge against Vegromov because he successfully completed an alternative measures program. The programs are available as a way to make amends to the complainant without going through the courts.
I'm always responsible for all of my actions. I've been 100% consistent with the authorities from the very beginning, all the way through with what I did do and what I did not do. At the end of the day, the charge has been dropped against me.
Vegromov's lawyer says the 2015 incident involved 2 adults fully clothed in daylight on a 3rd date in circumstances where many people might have thought there was consent, but the complaint said there wasn't. The mayor says the situation could have benefited from more communication.
The BC RCMP is in a big financial hole, according to an internal email sent to staff. The email, sent last week by Deputy Commissioner Jennifer Strachan, predicted a $10 million deficit. Staff were told about immediate spending cuts in order to deal with the shortfall. Solicitor General Mike Farnworth says the province is working with the RCMP to make sure the cuts don't affect public safety. So far, gang and organized crime prevention units haven't been affected. Strachan's email also forecast a similar financial scenario for the coming year.
A Vancouver Island mother says her children's right to religious freedom was violated when their class took part in an Indigenous smudging ceremony. Smudging is traditionally a ceremony that burns medicinal plants to purify or cleanse the soul of negative thoughts of a person or place. The woman is seeking a court-ordered ban on the practice at the Port Alberni School District, where her children attend. Interveners in the case, the New Chelnuth Tribal Council, says the ritual is not religious and a ban would deprive students of learning about Indigenous culture. The woman is asking the courts to declare the smudging a charter violation. The trial is set to begin Monday in Nanaimo.
Public meetings got underway today for the City of Vancouver's multi-million-dollar citywide plan. The extensive consultation process rolling out over the next 6 months. The $18 million project will guide future priorities like housing, transportation, and urban growth into 2050 and beyond. Residents, business owners, and other institutions will all get a say in the various stages of the consultation. And in one of the first public meetings, Mayor Kennedy Stewart heard that some residents of the downtown east side want the area designated as a full neighborhood.
I think that's exactly the kind of thing we want to hear, is that what would make Vancouver more like home for you, and what would you like to see recognized in official planning, and that's one of those great ideas that we'll need to consider.
And if you want to have your say, an online survey is asking Vancouver residents and business owners for feedback on the state of the city and about what matters to them. The survey will be up on the city's website by until early 2020.
Well, Mike, it's time to get out your rain boots, your
Is
rain
it?
jacket.
They're standing by. They're poised to make an appearance.
Well, apparently it's happening tonight, right, Brett?
That is correct. I'm glad to hear that you're so ready, Mike. You've got everything ready to go, because truly, as we get toward the end of the work week and into this weekend, you're going to be needing to pull out all of the rain gear, including umbrellas, rain boots, everything. In terms of the rain right now, you can see just down here in the light green, it's presently over Vancouver Island. It's still going to take a little bit of time before it makes it over into the metro region here. I'm still looking at sort of the overnight period is largely when the heaviest rain is going to be falling, but it will be falling, and fairly steadily at that. Interesting note about temperatures today. Hottest spot in the whole country, not even just BC. Well, good old White Rock, just over 14 degrees there. Vancouver, not too far behind at the airport, got up to about 13 degrees. And really, normally for this time of year in Vancouver, we'd be looking at temperatures during the day at about 9. So we are certainly above seasonal for that. Overall tonight, we're barely going to notice a change in these temperatures. All that cloud cover is really going to keep things quite mild, and of course, as always, a little cooler toward Burnaby and New West. But in general, it is going to be a rain story, not only just for tonight. We're going to see those lows maybe around 8 degrees or so. Heaviest rain falling first thing in the morning, but by the afternoon, it's probably just going to be tapering off, and it's going to be a chance for us to take just one collective breath before all of the rain comes our way this weekend. I'll have more on that when I come back.
All right, I've got my breath ready. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
And a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, for years, it's been used as the go-to allergy drug. Now, why a growing number of doctors say the antihistamine is not so safe. That's after the break.
Thanks so much for joining us online during our regularly scheduled TV commercial break. We are always ad-free here on our live streams, and tonight we're back with, you guessed it, Throwback Thursday.
Yes, back in 1985, there was a race brewing on store shelves that had consumers kind of bubbling with excitement. Cherry Cola was the flavor of the moment, and that had the world's 2 cola juggernauts battling it out to beat each other to market. Have a look.
Thursday morning, Winnipeg. An overnight flight from the West Coast has delivered the secret concentrate, and presto, thousands upon thousands of cans of Cherry Pepsi released upon an unsuspecting city. Cherry Pepsi has beaten Cherry Coke to the market in Winnipeg, as it did in both Vancouver and Edmonton. In the battle for the hearts and minds and soft drink money of the 12 to 17-year-old crowd, Cherry Pepsi has scored first. Sure, Cherry Coke's out too, but the point is Pepsi came out of nowhere to get its version to the stores first. Obsessed with beating Coke, Pepsi President Clive Minto led a top priority 5-week crash program with a code name.
We called it Rambo.
The troops in this war, however, are a little more conservative than our friend Rambo. Pepsi salesman Derek Joseph is taking aim at a Safeway store in Winnipeg. Well, Pepsi won this battle, and the store manager reports Cherry Pepsi is outselling Cherry Coke at his store 2-1. Up in the executive suite, Pepsi Canada President Clive Minto will get paid well over $200,000 this year, and he figures he's worth it for getting Cherry Pepsi out first.
You do get a competitive edge by being in first. You get the lion's share of the space in the store, the lion's share of the consumer's attention. And if you can be in number one and become entrenched, then I think you've got a lead.
Over at Coke, Vice President Marketing Candace Innes will make well over $100,000 this year, and she says Cherry Pepsi really didn't get much of a jump on Coke.
The jump was a matter of hours, and it doesn't make one bit of difference in the consumer's minds when it comes down to a matter of hours.
22 million taste tests around the world tell us that Pepsi brand is preferred over Coke brand in regular colas.
Well, it all depends on how you look at it.
We're not only going to win the cola war in total, but we're also going to win the cherry cola battle.
When you're 55% larger than they are, it's not a consequence. I mean, it's not an issue. It's not important to us.
So millions of cans of cherry this and cherry that are racing out of the factories. The 12 to 17-year-old market is being pitched to drink the stuff like never before. And all this because Coke and Pepsi don't like each other one bit.
Yeah, so it raises the question, is it still around?
Well,
you don't see it on store shelves.
Our director, Mark, says you can get it at the movie theater in the fountain section. Also should note, now they've come up with all these flavors. BC Raspberry Cola, Georgia Peach, and they swear they use BC raspberries. All right, we'll be back in a few moments.
Well, the antihistamine Benadryl has long been a staple in many medicine cabinets, but Canadian allergists are warning of potentially dangerous side effects.
As Nicole Ireland explains, the worry is if you take just a bit too much, you could end up in the hospital.
When his 5-year-old son gets rashes or hives, Frank Nelson usually reaches for liquid Benadryl. Now that he's heard the warnings, that's going to stop.
We're always looking out for the safety of our children, and so I would definitely start using a different product.
Old habits are hard to break. Benadryl was first introduced in the 1940s. Drugs weren't subjected to the same licensing standards they are now.
Children's Benadryl effectively relieves you.
And it's still advertised as providing quick and effective relief of allergy symptoms, even though it can have dangerous side effects, especially for children.
There's no shade of gray here. We really know that this is a drug that has significant risk.
Benadryl's active ingredient, diphenhydramine, causes drowsiness and sedation. That can impair children's cognitive function. If kids are given too much of it, they can have difficulty breathing and even overdose.
I don't think that parents appreciate the risk of this for younger children who can't speak to how sedated they feel.
Allergists say Benadryl should no longer be an over-the-counter drug. A Move Toronto pharmacist, Stacey D'Angelo, would applaud.
Basically what this is doing is forcing an intervention with the pharmacist. So it's still accessible. You don't actually need a prescription. It's just kept behind the counter. So if you do need it for whatever reason, you just need to have that discussion with the pharmacist to make sure it's appropriate for you and that you're aware of the risks.
Benadryl's manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, insists that the product is safe if used as directed. In a statement, the company says Benadryl products have been trusted by doctors and moms for more than 60 years. Health Canada says it's reviewing the concerns raised by doctors. In the meantime, allergists want people to realize there are plenty of safer antihistamines, such as Claritin, Reactin, or Arius, for allergy relief. Nicole Ireland, CBC News, Toronto.
The Canadian Pediatric Society is telling doctors to get familiar with alternative approaches to treating autism.
Yeah, with so much misinformation and pseudoscience out there, parents looking for help for their kids can be vulnerable to exploitation.
And as Vicadopia explains, talking to a doctor may help them sort fact from fiction.
We're just going to do that. When Christopher Lehman was diagnosed with autism as a child, his mother Sandra vowed to try any treatment that could help him speak. Treatments that sound scientific, but aren't actually backed by mainstream science.
Here we have biocalibration electrodermal screening. What is that?
It was to bring his body into balance. So, whatever that meant at the time.
Then there was the chiropractor who said he could, in his words, correct autism.
He just kept saying, well, you know, we need to go a little bit further. You know, he's doing so well, let's just keep it going. It wouldn't have stopped had we not stopped it ourselves.
More than a year later, she'd spent more than $5,000.
It's desperation. It really is. Because there was no guidance before from anybody.
The Canadian Pediatric Society is trying to offer that guidance to doctors to better inform them about complementary and alternative autism treatments on the market, from low-risk interventions like vitamins and special diets to high-risk therapies such as chelation and hyperbaric oxygen treatments. The list doesn't include everything.
Hey, Nat. How are you? Good, thanks.
One of the authors, a leading autism researcher, says unproven therapies can be a drain on time, financial, and emotional resources. But doctors have to accept that won't stop parents from trying them.
We're not ultimately the gatekeepers for some of these treatments, and that complementary alternative practices are often part of the approach to healthcare.
I would have liked to have them focus more on the risks towards the child.
This doctor says the new guidelines don't address the unknown long-term impact of all these alternative therapies on children. There's also the underlying question of why parents are driven to these unproven treatments and how mainstream medicine sometimes doesn't offer them a lot of hope.
We tend to focus a lot on the deficits, a lot on the issues. We don't always focus on strengths, and I think that that's something that needs to be always addressed.
What do you think?
As for Sandra Hart, she has no regrets trying alternative treatments. She says if she didn't, it would leave her wondering if she did everything possible to help her son. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Innisfil, Ontario.
To Ottawa now, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is trying to figure out how he'll govern without a majority.
As David Cochrane reports, the NDP's Jagmeet Singh thinks his party could be the key to Liberal survival.
He's by no means the Prime Minister's only option, but Jagmeet Singh is the only option that is both progressive and federalist.
If they want to pass a bill, they need to work with the party. If they want to pass a bill that's progressive, that puts in place something that's national, that's going to benefit all Canadians, they have to work with New Democrats.
It's Singh's attempt to distinguish his party from the Bloc Québécois, a progressive option that might work with the Liberals, but also a separatist one that only cares about Quebec.
I still believe that Quebec will do better when it becomes a country. So I'm not the one that will fight to have a nice, beautiful, and united Canada.
They're not a national party. If they want to do something that's national, if they want to develop something that's going to benefit all Canadians, it's us.
So he's leveraging his 24 seats for all they are worth. After all, his party is broke. He lost a third of his caucus, but Singh still has to project a position of strength.
I have no interest in blindly working with the Liberals. If they want to deliver on real things that help Canadians out, yes, absolutely, we're going to work together.
In his meeting, Singh listed pharmacare, dental care, and compensation for Indigenous children as conditions for support. It continues a week of face-to-face meetings, during which the leaders who lost the election sought concessions from the leader who won it. You can expect a lot of grandstanding as all the parties try to flex their muscles in this new minority parliament, but so much of it is just for show. The reality is that the only party with the money to run a quick election campaign would be the Conservatives, and they haven't even decided if they're going to keep their leader. David Cochrane, CBC News, Ottawa.
Just ahead, as BC introduces sweeping new rules on vape products, how parents can talk to their teens about the dangers of vaping.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Both sides are disappointed that we can't come to an agreement.
And unfortunately, for the passengers that we serve, they are still not serious about addressing the outstanding issues.
Your transit commute is about to get more complicated. The Union and Coast Mountain Bus Company have been unable to reach a deal. That means bus drivers are taking job action one step further with a refusal to work overtime. That means that also more impact to bus service is likely starting tomorrow.
The BC RCMP is forecasting a $10 million deficit. That means immediate cuts to spending in order to deal with the shortfall. Solicitor General Mike Farnworth says the province is working with the RCMP to make sure the cuts don't affect public safety. So far, gang and organized crime prevention units haven't been affected by any cuts.
An explosion in teen vaping is prompting action from the BC government. New rules for vape products are coming that include higher taxes and nicotine limits.
The goal is to make vaping less attractive to young people, but as Tina Lovegreen tells us tonight, the kids aren't sure the new measures will work.
It's hard to miss the big vape clouds outside this East Vancouver school. It's a daily occurrence during lunch break. Students as young as 15 taking part.
It's the flavor, it's the head rush, it's the social factor of it.
And it's that social factor that gets youth hooked on vapes.
As a kid, you just see everybody else trying and you're like, I want to try that. And then you get a nice head rush and you're like, I like that feeling. And then you just keep trying it.
Even though these students are underage, they say it's easy to get their hands on the product.
And where do you guys get your vapes from?
Local shops. Yeah, because some stores, they sell to minors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The province wants the sale of flavored vapes only in age-restricted shops like this one.
I welcome those changes as far as getting it out of the convenience stores and things like that, because I don't think they really check ID and they don't really do what the law is supposed to be telling them to do.
But he's relieved there's no outright ban on flavored vapes because he says that would mean the end of business.
There's nothing else to sell. It would just definitely cripple the industry.
They just want the nicotine hit at this point.
Grade 12 student Isabel Casey says her high school cracked down on vaping by closing the bathrooms for weeks.
How effective was that? Not effective at all. Awful.
Better, she says, to reach kids before they even start.
Educating like grade 6, so they know at a very young age the health concerns, because we never got that. We went into like grade 9 and it was like, wow, this brand new product. Why don't we try it? And then you're hooked.
Education is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular thing.
Especially since not all students believe vaping is that bad for you.
Not really, no. Not as much as people are making it to seem. But, you know, it definitely has some health hazards to it, but it's all about managing it yourself, you know.
The government seems to agree. Part of its plan is to have young people lead a new social media campaign, hoping it will apply a different kind of peer pressure. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
When it comes to raising awareness about the potential pitfalls of vaping, parents speaking with their kids is still the best method of education. But how do you go about approaching the subject? Well, Mike sat down with the Vancouver School Board's manager of substance use education, Art Steinman, to find out.
Why are we seeing so many young people vaping these days?
I think there's a number of reasons. There is some appeal to the young people of even the flavors and the names of the different flavors. It can also, some young people like to take some risks, and this can be seen a bit risky. Some young people like to be a little bit rebellious. This could maybe fit into some of those needs. A lot of them, they have friends that are vaping, they see it around them.
And is it your sense that they're aware of the potential health effects?
Not so much, but some of the concentrations of nicotine in the vape cartridges can go very, very high. And so a young person, a young body using that in a regular way, even for a few weeks, chances are pretty good that they could be developing a dependence.
I think a lot of parents are worried, alarmed, concerned about vaping. What can they do?
Well, I think parents would do well to try to be a little bit informed, learn a little bit about it. You don't have to be an expert and know it all. Even things like strengthening connections to interests and activities and sports and drama club and debating club, whatever, other things that young people can put some energy into and
be with other young people and have some fun and stimulate their brain. Those things are really important. Having strong relationships with healthy adults can be a real strong protective factor. Be aware of your role model, and even if you don't use, be aware of your role model, because if you're too heavy-handed and overstate and exaggerate and say you're going to die if you do it, that's not going to be helpful either. So a lot of it is about trying to communicate this is not a taboo subject. Let's put it on the table and let's have many, many small, short conversations about it.
So how do you start that conversation?
A little tricky, but I think there's lots of opportunity. So you're driving in the car with your youth, the radio says something about vitamin E, acetate, maybe killing people. Just, oh, what was that? Did you hear that? Do you know anything about what they're talking about? I wonder what that's all about. So if the topic comes up some other way, just draw a little attention to it for a minute, see where that goes. So we really want to try and support young people to delay, to put it off. Hopefully, if they do put it off through the adolescent years, when they get into their young adult years, they will be strong enough in many other ways that they'll just not have any interest in even starting it. But getting them through the teen years can be challenging sometimes.
At 6:33 on this Thursday evening, you're looking at a live shot of the Port of Vancouver. Some late showers tonight, turning into full rain overnight. But when does it stop? Well, Brett is here with your full forecast after the break. How many hours?
We're counting down. I'm thinking really about midnight tonight. So we've still got a few more hours. And speaking with people today, if you didn't get the chance to maybe rake up some of those leaves that have been accumulating on your lawn, it's not a fun activity, but it's probably best to do that now before it gets any worse.
Well, you've got some time.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Evening leaf raking. What a great thing to do.
Or
just
for
a nice
those
way
of us who live in a condo, don't have to worry about it. I'll just watch everybody.
Yeah, it's so true. But no, today I did want to show you, it was a beautiful morning, and I think this is going to be one of the last ones that could be potentially classified as that. That is, of course, if you're not a fan of the rain. I know many people out here are, so it's not necessarily fair for me to say, but I enjoy the sunshine, and it was a really nice way to start the day. But yes, we are transitioning now into potentially, I guess, more traditional Vancouver weather here in November. That's probably what we can be calling it, alluding to the fact that we are going to be seeing this rain push in largely throughout the overnight period. So as early as midnight, but more likely towards, say, 3 or 4 in the morning. This is going to be pretty heavy at times, but then first thing in the morning, that's going to probably ease off a little bit, so give you the chance to get about your business as you need to. And throughout the day, I'd expect maybe a few spotty showers into the Fraser Valley, but for more of the downtown core, I think we're going to be able to take a little bit of a break, and it's likely to be cloudy. So we have a couple of systems to deal with. This is the first one. This is just for tonight into tomorrow. We're still looking at a widespread 10 to 20 millimeters of rain for pretty well everyone here, but really this is just kind of a tease for what's coming. Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement for not only Metro Vancouver, but the Sunshine Coast, Central Coast, and the western edge of Vancouver Island, because not only is it going to be rainy, it's probably going to be a little gusty as well on Saturday. So any ferry crossings, if you're doing that, do be aware they might be impacted by this. Here's why. We're looking at a Pineapple Express system. This just means moisture coming directly, essentially from Hawaii, warm in nature, coming all the way across and making its way onto the south coast throughout this entire weekend. And that's going to be certainly leading to some impressive totals. And I wanted to show you this because oftentimes I do just show what's going on in Metro Vancouver, but really you're going to see here along the western side of Vancouver Island, including Tofino, Ucluelet, we could be seeing rainfall totals here in excess of 100 millimeters. And keep in mind, this is really only between 24 and 48 hours. Here in Metro Vancouver, the totals still have yet to be finalized, but I would say anywhere between 30 and 50 millimeters is certainly likely. And as far as our 5-day forecast is concerned, it is looking quite nice at this point in time. Temperatures, that is, definitely above seasonal, anywhere between, say, 10 and 13 degrees, but definitely on the soggy side. And come Monday, well, we're going to have to wait and see if that little bit of sunshine actually pans out.
You had Monday clear yesterday. What's going on?
These things change. It's unfortunate.
It's changing. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
A lot of the wet stuff in Montreal, but it wasn't rain, and it was quite a scene greeting commuters in the downtown part of that city today. Steps into a subway station turned into a waterfall, the station underneath filling with water. A water main break closed service to half the city's downtown metro system. As Sarah Levitt reports, it was pretty bad, but could have been much, much worse.
It's not a sight anybody wants to see. The problem started early this morning. It wasn't until around 10 a.m. that crews found the source.
The Public Works have managed to locate and shut off the water that was causing the leak. It is a 12-inch main that is under Vigée Street.
By then, 2 feet of water had already accumulated. One wall in a parking garage collapsed, but it wasn't all bad news.
There was about 2 inches of water this morning in the subway. That being said, the rails were not affected a lot, which is a great thing because this is all electric. All the electric devices as well were protected, so this is good.
The closure caused quite a bit of chaos for rush hour at Barrie-UQAM. Commuters were told to transfer over to an already busy Green Line or to take special buses to make up for the closure.
C'est plate ce matin parce que c'était en dehors de notre contrôle, là. Mais on fait avec.
Parfois ça arrive, on est un peu déçus, mais bon.
Ça fait vraiment très longtemps qu'on attend, puis la ligne verte est débordée, on peut pas aller nulle part.
The 8 stops affected between Barrie and Lee and Elgru are the busiest of Montreal's metro, meaning there were a lot of late people this morning. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
At least 2 people are dead, several others hurt after a 16-year-old opened fire at a high school in Southern California this morning. What investigators are saying happened next.
Democrats in the U.S. are gearing up for the next round of public hearings in the impeachment inquiry. It's the day after the first round of public hearings in the U.S. House of Representatives into whether the president should be impeached.
And although for some the evidence is already clear, as Ellen Morrow reports, Donald Trump is dismissing the whole thing as a sham.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi used some of her strongest language yet to condemn the president's actions. She says they amount to bribery.
What President Trump has done on the record in terms of acting to advantage a foreign power to help him in his own election, and of the obstruction of information about that, the cover-up, makes what Nixon did look almost small.
Yesterday, 2 career civil servants and current top U.S. officials on Ukraine policy testified that the Trump administration froze much-needed military aid to Ukraine in an effort to force it to launch investigations to try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden and his family. Acting Ambassador to Ukraine William Taylor said he sat in astonishment when he found out the aid was being withheld.
Withhold that assistance for no good reason other than help with the political campaign made no sense. It was illogical. It could not be explained. It was crazy.
Taylor also said one of his staffers overheard President Trump ask about the investigations on a phone call to Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union appointed by Donald Trump. The staffer told Taylor that Sondland said Trump cared more about investigating the Bidens than he did about Ukraine being a strategic ally in need. Today, the Associated Press is citing an unnamed source who says that a second staffer is backing up that account, which Democrats say is further proof the president was abusing his power for his own political gain. Republicans remain unswayed.
Nothing happened here. We're not going to impeach this president over this. We're not going to legitimize a hearing where you can only call Democratic witnesses. It's over. It's done for me.
The partisanship is set to get even more fraught with another public hearing on Capitol Hill tomorrow and more televised testimony scheduled for next week. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
A horrifying day at a high school near Los Angeles. A 16-year-old has shot and killed at least 2 students and hurt several others.
As Kim Brunhuber reports, the teen also shot himself and is now in critical condition.
Minutes after parents dropped their kids off at this school, they got the news that every parent in America dreads that there's an active shooter in the school. So students here were forced to shelter in place, some of them for up to an hour in their classrooms while police searched. They say they found 6 gunshot victims inside. They were transported to hospital, and it turns out one of the people who was transported to hospital was the shooter himself, a 16-year-old boy, a student at this school, and today is his birthday. Police say they found a .45 caliber handgun. It had no more bullets. Police say that he used the last round on himself. Police say there are no further suspects.
The school was locked down. We did partial evacuation. We also sheltered in place a portion of the school until we established who was responsible for this tragic shooting.
The suspect was later identified as one of the victims who was found in the quad. He is identified as a 16-year-old male whose birthday is today.
Now, interestingly, students here at this school went through a live shooter drill just a couple of weeks ago, but of course, nothing would prepare them for the terror of hearing those pops and knowing that it was the real thing.
And people were tripping and falling. I was trying to help them up. It was absolutely terrifying. I can't even comprehend it. It doesn't make sense to me how this could happen here.
So now, Santa Clarita, the latest American community, because of gun violence, to have to come together and rally and grapple with questions that just can't be answered. In the word of one student here, what kind of world is this? Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, Santa Clarita.
A Manitoba grandmother was pretty sure she was going to drown after finding herself in the freezing Red River.
But as the CBC's Marina von Stackelberg tells us, 2 strangers changed her fate.
Hey there.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Teresa Byra says these 2 men are her guardian angels.
You guys are awesome. Yeah, just glad you're okay.
Yes. Mike Girardin and Jesse Reimer were working on a roof right near the Red River when they heard calls for help.
First, it sounded like a kid, but as we decided to investigate, got a little closer, it's clearly not what it was.
I was just screaming for help, and I was crying, and I kept screaming so somebody would hear me.
On Tuesday, this ice was a path. Byra was walking along when she slipped and fell into the icy cold water. The current pushed her along 20 or 30 feet until she managed to grab hold of the wall right near those 2 yellow posts.
She was definitely a little blue, her fingers were purple, just tired from holding on.
I didn't think they were going to make it to me. I thought the current would take me with those big ice chunks, and they would just push me out into the middle and I would be gone. But thank God those boys just came and they rescued me and they pulled me out of the water, and I'm just so thankful. They're my heroes. I'll love them forever.
The men almost became victims themselves, breaking through the ice, but only up to their knees. They managed to pull her to the riverbank and called 911.
It was a little surreal. Just couldn't believe that this was actually happening. It's a little crazy still.
Byra spent 6 hours in hospital, but returned the next day with her daughter and granddaughter in tow.
This is what you saved me for. This is my daughter and her baby.
The RCMP have nominated the 2 men for a bravery award, but they don't see themselves as heroes.
Just being called a hero, it definitely, we heard the call and we answered it.
Figured this is something that you should do for anybody.
But I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful.
Byra says she'll never forget what these 2 strangers did for her.
I'm gonna send them pictures of my kids and my family. They'll be part of the family. Definitely send them a Christmas present.
Hope I get a Christmas card from you.
Definitely.
Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Thank you.
A Saskatchewan family devastated by tragedy has turned its pain into promise for others.
As Bonnie Allen explains, thanks to them, a Syrian refugee family is now reunited after years apart.
There was so much anticipation for this long-awaited reunion. A cheering crowd waving Canadian flags welcomed Abdel Nasser Al-Khatib, his wife Hiam, and their 2 children. The Syrian refugees were quickly engulfed in hugs as they reunited with the rest of their family members, more than 20 of them, who had all settled in Regina a few years ago. Here to witness the reunion, a Regina family who helped make it possible. They channeled their grief into generosity. Last year, 25-year-old Jeremy Campbell died while visiting hot springs in Japan. He slipped, hit his head, and drowned. Friends offered to raise money to help transport Jeremy Campbell's body home to Saskatchewan, but the Campbell family decided to use the money, $23,000, to privately sponsor a Syrian refugee family. More importantly, to reunite a family. They said it would be a fitting legacy.
I think you can just feel his spirit everywhere. Like, he would be so happy to know that this is what has come of something so tragic.
Most of the Al-Khatib family came to Regina in 2016. They were among the first 25,000 Syrian refugees welcomed into Canada. But Abdel Nasser and his family were left behind. Now, he got to see his mother again after nearly 4 years.
شو حسيت لما شفت امك اول مره يعني؟
الشعور حلو بس يعني
شعور لا يوصف. He can't explain what he feel when he see his mother.
No words.
But he can't, no words for that, yeah.
And his mother got to meet her grandson, Jamal, just 3 years old, for the first time. As for the Campbell family, Stephanie Campbell says her brother Jeremy would be proud. And though she doesn't have her brother anymore, it was beautiful to see this family reunited with their loved one. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Regina.
In a galaxy far, far away, well, not exactly, Star Wars is making its way to the small screen with The Mandalorian. Is the Disney product any good? Eli Glasner has his take next.
Friday on the Early Edition, we'll wrap up our series Safe Homes about how the housing affordability crisis is making it more difficult for women to escape domestic abuse. We'll hear from BC's Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, Mitzi Dean.
Well, there's something new in the Star Wars universe. Disney has just launched a Star Wars television series, the first live-action show.
Yes, The Mandalorian will air on the company's streaming service. So will fans discover what they're looking for in this glossy series? Our Eli Glasner with the review.
A long time ago in a galaxy far away, there was the return of the Jedi. The Mandalorian takes place about 5 years after the evisceration of the Empire by the rebels, but before the rise of the First Order in The Force Awakens. Within minutes, fans will be reveling in the familiar creatures and droids. With a budget of at least $130 million, this series spares no expense, recreating the lived-in off-world grime that fans expect. But Mandalorian shows us not all is well in the years after the rebellion's victory. At a meeting where Carl Weathers plays Grief Karga, a broker for the bounty hunters, we see he can barely afford to pay his surviving guild members. So the Mando takes the highest commission, which leads to this.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
An exciting rundown with the remnants of the Empire. This is where Mandalorian starts to show its potential, not just seeing the rusty, battle-worn stormtroopers, but the presence of Werner Herzog.
Grief Karga said you were coming.
As the client. While some other characters look like fans playing dress-up, even without a blaster, Herzog is clearly the most dangerous man in the room.
Please excuse his lack of decorum. His enthusiasm outweighs his discretion.
Of course, this is only the first episode, and I'll admit it's difficult for me to adjust my soaring Star Wars expectations to a more episodic narrative that dribbles out 40 minutes at a time. The Mandalorian ends with a stunning reveal and a shift from that Western style to something closer to a samurai tale. The big reveal at the end suggests a possible collision course for the Mandalorian and the Jedis, and that's welcome because at the outset, what's powering this series is more nostalgia than plot or affection for those characters. Take away the setting and there's just not much of a tractor beam of a story pulling us forward. Here's hoping, as the series continues, we get more of a glimpse of the man behind the mask to see whether this Star Wars series can sustain itself. 3 stars out of 5. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Not surprised.
3.
We both guessed 3.
Oh, I thought you said 3.5.
Then I changed it to 3 because he started going off at the end there. It's tough, though, to compete with the actual movies and to create a show. There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but, you know, instead of watching a 2.5 or 3 hour movie, you know, you package it up, little 40 minutes, and away you go.
That's what Eli's saying he doesn't like about it, though.
Well, yeah, but I thought it appeals to millions of people.
Of course.
Just saying. There you go.
All right, that is it for our program tonight. Dan Burt is here at 11 o'clock after the National.
We will see you again tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.
Good night.